So, of the three major powers that we're discussing today who settled in the Americas, this screencast will go over England and England's influence on the modern day Americas. So, first off, the motives for settlement for the English really comes in twofold. For the past two groups, the French and the Spanish, it's a pretty much singular thing. We say, oh, the French this, the French that. But when it comes to England, we actually have to separate it between two different groups. So we divide it between the religious group and the economic group. So we say religion and cash. And by cash, I mean cash crops. So let's start with cash crops. It goes back to 1607, the founding of Jamestown in what's now Virginia, the colony of Virginia, and now the state of Virginia. Oftentimes, this is known as the Jamestown Fiasco. This is the story of John Smith, kind of an invented history that he created, but John Smith, John Rolfe, and Pocahontas and everything else. This group of individuals arrived pretty much looking for gold. They thought that they would find plenty of gold, other raw materials that they could simply harvest and take back to England and make all kinds of money off of. But they didn't bring anything to prepare for survival, farming equipment. And they didn't even really want to farm, even when they realized they had to. So the starvation rate and the death rate was quite high in the early years, and it was just about on the brink of collapse until tobacco came along. That's right. The success of the first English colony was pretty much dependent on tobacco. Once they planted tobacco, tobacco is what we call a cash crop. That means you cannot eat it. All you can do is sell it and profit from it. So they discovered tobacco as a very lucrative cash crop. They're going to make plenty of money in England. And because of that tobacco, Jamestown is saved. People come, they settle, they grow tobacco, they take it back to England, and they make quite a bit of money. So really, it was tobacco that saved Jamestown. On a little bit more negative note, this tobacco essentially begins the legacy of slavery in the English colonies and later the United States. In 1619, the first African slaves arrived in Jamestown, essentially for assistance with tobacco, growing tobacco and harvesting tobacco. So there is, some negative light that can be shed on Jamestown. Yeah, there we are. Now, the other group that must be mentioned is the religious group. So in 1620, in two different locations, you have Jamestown in the southern portion of Virginia, the Chesapeake Bay area. The Puritans arrive in 1620 in what's now called Cape Cod, Plymouth Rock, essentially. This was to establish a permanent settlement. Oftentimes, this group of people have a lot of different names. Puritans, in grade school, we call them the Pilgrims. But really what we can call them are separatists. They are looking to separate from the Church of England. Puritan isn't really a correct word for it. The Puritans wanted to purify the Anglican Church, the Church of England. They thought it was corrupt and greedy, and they wanted to make it better. The group of individuals that came to the colonies were looking to separate from it altogether. Think of it like this. If a husband and a wife are having marital troubles, you don't move 3,000 miles away from each other to try and save the relationship. That's at that point you're looking to get away from each other. And that's really what they were doing. They wanted to set up a new town, a new community where they could practice religion as they saw fit. So that's oftentimes where you get the concept of religious freedom. They had to come to escape the tyranny in England, but in reality, England was pretty excited for them to just leave and go away, so they didn't have to bother with them either. So it is really a separation that they were looking for. Now, they were aiming for Virginia, but or that mouth of the Hudson River, but they couldn't quite get there. The ship that was transporting them, it was not a ship that they owned, a ship called the Mayflower, pretty much got turned back trying to make it to Virginia by foul weather, dropped them off at Plymouth Rock and said, well, this is pretty much the closest we can get to Virginia, so good luck. It's rather cold in the northern parts of Massachusetts, and the starvation level was very high again. Of course, those who did survive the first winter, and they're assisted by the Native Americans. That's where we have the story of Thanksgiving and that great community between the Native Americans and the Puritans, the separatists that settled in Plymouth Rock. Now, geographic areas of control, when it comes to the original colonies established in the Americas by England, you really got to think of it as a toehold when you think about the vast expanse that Spain controlled and really the formidable area that France controlled. There's really no opportunities for expansion by England. It's a toehold. They are barely holding on to the edge of the continent. It's almost an ironic twist. I think if people were placing bets, they wouldn't expect England and later the byproduct of England, the United States, to end up expanding all the way west to the West Coast and control the continental United States. So that's where they controlled the territory. Now, the legacy of England, what did they leave us? Well, essentially, they left us with the form of government. So much of the Enlightenment and the concepts of self-government were essentially derived from England, especially this parliamentary system of elected representatives to speak on behalf of the people. England had a little bit different concept of this, of only representing nobility and so on and so forth. But we didn't necessarily invent our form of government. We definitely borrowed from a lot of different concepts. We created something great, but it wasn't totally unique to the founding fathers. Obviously, language as part of our legacy, and naturally the United States stemmed from England. So much of the legacy of England is the resulting United States that came from it. Okay, that's all for this screencast. Thanks for tuning in.